Welcome. Feels proud actually that you're not in David Anderson's session and you are here. That's going on parallelly, right? But humbling as well. So thank you for being here. That's encouragement for me. What I'm about to share is some of my experiences over the last 2 years, working in 4 different industries, trying out different things in my own journey of learning and figuring out things. I started doing this being agile, I would say, back in 2002, 2003 as an individual, uh, where I was working trying to deliver this network, 3G, first 3G in the world through Hutchison Whampoa, and in 3 UK, and even the RFCs weren't ratified. So go figure, creating a solution of user experience on 3G network when even the RFCs of the protocol that it needs to work on weren't there. So we were literally had to be agile. There was no other way to be. As the protocols were ratified monthly basis, we were changing our system and working. And so that behavior kind of stuck with me and started working on it, became inherent with me. It was only in like 2010, 11 I realized what I was doing because of being. I had not even through all my journey heard the word Scrum, Kanban, anything till 2010 or 11, but I was just being there. So, and then some conversations, being there, and then when I heard the words, I started studying about it, knowing more about it. And that's where I talk about I stand on the shoulders of learnings of so many others before me in an alphabetical order, and in that I've learned so much from them. And so you will see a lot of things in this abstract, in this session, that takes from their work, but how I have applied it differently, feeling like a bartender, right, who has a lot of drinks on the shelf. He serves you the drink of the house or creates a cocktail for you sometimes. And so feel this more like my cocktail. Now it's my house cocktail for you. If you like it, great. Please give me feedback where I can adapt it to make it better for you. All right. Now the intent has been, what I figured out was the focus has always been when I talked about Scrum, when I look at Kanban, or when I was looking at SAFe and others, was that they were always talking about this right way to do it. They didn't focus on right things at the right time, as in what was the customer looking for. That element in that conversation in any method, if is what I felt missing, where the intent, having learned it the hard way, where the RFCs were not even ready, I started talking about what are the right things at the right time, and let's just live with it, let's just move with it, and then figure out. And that's where it came about. And what I figured was talking about these highly effective Ds: dream, discover, define, design, develop, deploy, and delight, is what I've created a connected Kanban board across the various perspectives. And I was pleasantly surprised through Klaus's presentation and then Adam Wu's earlier, where they talk about these connected Kanbans through the various perspectives. And I don't call them layers. My intent is all about perspective. Like if the team's doing the work, that's the team's perspective, where the coordination layer has a perspective of how to coordinate all the work. And then there's people with the roles of hats of portfolio and strategy. And that's their role. Whether you're the director of a company and you're an individual contributor, but you're doing the work, you're part of the team. And if you are even a junior person, but you have been assigned to look at the portfolio strategy and do the research work there, then you are working within the portfolio strategy group and that perspective, that with that lens. So from that perspective is where I've looked at it, what role is in which lens. And talking through that, one of the conversations that came about, that it's fail. We should be open to fail. We should accept fail, fast feedback loop. That's what fail is. But it was not easy convincing people through this journey in the last few years as a coach and consultant. So I said, I'll create some acronym out of it or a PDCA cycle out of it that makes it more easy to accept. So the cycle I created was called feed, act, inspect, learn. So that's the PDCA cycle to make that people comfortable with the word failure. It's like, it's okay to fail, we say, but yeah, it's human to err. Don't repeat your mistakes, is what we say. So what does it mean? Learn from them and go move on. right? And that's where the whole thought process was. And so in that PDA cycle, across the whole portfolio, how this applies, but again, believe in that whole cycle at each perspective, whether you're at the team layer, whether you're in the coordination layer, or the focus at the portfolio enterprise perspectives. Make sense? We good with that? Awesome. So with that said, the intent of the rest of the slides is to actually walk us through the journey, and some of them have very distinct specific guidelines. I believe in minimum guidelines, minimal constraints to be there to enable self-organizing and self-management, because very much like you say, right, I'm a citizen of a free country, yet I have those minimum guidelines called the Constitution. I have to live within certain of those guardrails, and then I am a good citizen. And similarly, there should be some of those minimum guidelines and minimum guardrails within any self-organizing, self-managing groups. And that's where we talk about this. And sometimes when I talk about across all the various industry in the whole context, it might feel overwhelming that too many guidelines. But if you look in respective contexts, they are like 2 to 3 guidelines only. But yes, across those 4 different perspectives with the permutation combination, it just make it 70 slides sometimes. So corollary remarks, interesting ones was leaders want their organizations to deliver highest value, fastest with built-in quality, predictably, right? Is almost if I've looked at, however, in trying to achieve that, they also have this fear within themselves, right? They don't want to get into the Nokia state or the fragile state that David talked about yesterday morning in the keynote, right? And what has happened because of all of the disruptions with Nortel, with borders and others, there's been a knee-jerk reaction in a sense to something that Adam said earlier this afternoon, where Ping An said, the business said, because Alibaba is doing great, let's go agile, right? I don't know what the word agile means, but go figure it, get the right consultants in, we need to go agile. We need to go there. And that is what also started the journey, is like, what does it mean? For me, like, is it one big umbrella? In my mind, it's like systems thinking, lean thinking, agile, and then methods and practices, or it's the other way around, which comes first? So I love the takeaway that Klaus, you talked about, and Adam said the same thing in yesterday and today, is start at the top. If there is something new we would do, is start at the top, not at the thing. And it comes from these learnings in the last 2 to 3 years, where I say, if I want the experience of a cruise ship, right, which has 4,000 people on it, I want the whole cruise ship going at the same time. I do not want the 20 lifeboats there going in 20 different directions to take me to safety, because that's not the experience I want in a cruise ship. What I want is the fun, the element, the enjoyment, the success, the growth, and everything there, right? So in that element of the cruise ship, then when I talk about the industry or the enterprise, I need to be able to have a policy where I can impact that element of agility, bring that at the whole enterprise at the start, right? And that's where the thought process was, to have the element that it has to be agree all organizations need a home, believe organizations need to leap, and complement and coordinate the chaos. The 3 words are specifically put there because they are 3 different acronyms from my perspective. Again, you would get that sense today with the word fail, and then others, I play with words a lot to make it easier and more welcoming for people to accept them, in a sense. And that's where it comes, is like holistic operating model for enterprises, lead to enterprise agility and prosperity, not profit, but importantly, you have that element of prosperity in there in mind, and collaborate holistically to achieve objectives set. And if you look at all of these, what makes a house a home? Come on, feedback. Our culture, our traditions, the values, the principles that that house is built on, right? It's not, Otherwise, the house and home or hotel, all of the H's have the same thing. They have the same roof, they have the same walls, they have the same, very much like any organization, has the same people, the same process, same tools. It's the purpose, if we look at it from that thing that makes the organization where you want to wake up and walk into. So can we bring that as a vision, as a mission, as a statement? Where does it come from? The top. It has to be aligned to that objective, and can we as holistically look at it and align ourselves to it? That's where the whole thing that evolved in my head was the holistic operating model for enterprises. And we all want to lead, right? As I said, but we don't want to get into that implosion. And that's the intent of the outcomes from my learnings. Questions on this? Make sense? Yeah. So anytime I've gone into these system entries, last 2 years or 3 years in these different places, this is the basic assessment I've come up with is requirements churn, stop-start syndrome, onboarding and attrition of people on-site and off-site, or things like teams are practicing Agile, but there's multiple flavors of it around in the big organization because they all started off those separate lifeboats. They were never considered a single, this thing under the leadership of multiple captains. Now think about if army has all these layers and hierarchy but didn't have one commander-in-chief and didn't have that alignment, where would it be, right? You still need inspect and adapt model in there, but with that self-managing SEALs are good examples of self-managing, self-organizing teams. However, they still believe in the same common mission statement across the whole organization, across the whole nation, right? It's not that I'm a SEAL team doesn't mean I'm competing with my other SEAL team, right? And that's where the element, we did have multiple flavors in an enterprise when it happened, and then optimize to the weakest link, right? Because we have conflicting priorities and practices when we have multiple teams. Something that I'm very influenced by is the works of Mr. Deming. He keeps saying even half a century ago or more that when parts of the system were left to themselves, they would become profit centers and start competing within themselves. So that's what we kind of see in this thing. And so from all of this assessment, and when I do readouts with these people, their answer is again the same thing. It's like if you start looking at it systematically at the big, start organizing things around the portfolio layer, you talk to them, even in the coordination layer, you get the same systemic answers, whereas finding the same root causes. If I do talk to different teams, it's almost like I'm observing the different symptoms, and they look very different. If I talk to 20 teams, it's 20 different symptoms. But if I take the 5 whys, simply standard to them, I get the similar root causes coming down to the same thing, that this is where we want to be. Now they want to be there, but they want to keep doing the same things. And what's that definition of? Keep doing the same thing and expecting different results in insanity. And I didn't want to put it in the slide, so I just left it ... Yeah. And then the beautiful book, what got you here won't get you there, right? However, most of the leadership, most of our managers are in that mindset. I got here by doing all these things, and I think I'll take to the next step right then. That is the biggest challenge I have seen when I'm working at the top layers now, is that how do I convince them? And what is it in there that, and the biggest thing I've learned is very answers that few others have given in the last 2 days is, you have to talk to them in that sense. What keeps you awake this weekend? And let's solve that 1 or 2 things. Let's buy your trust. Let's start trusting me, and now let's look at the bigger problems. And it is about that engagement. It's about building trust soon enough. Sooner we can do, the better it is, right? And move on from there. What does it take the old experts to adapt new tips? See how politically correct I've made that statement? What would it truly have been if it wasn't being recorded? It's only for our minds to assume. So what we do is make the issues known, agree to step-by-step plan to close the issues, commit to inspect and adapt, engage and empower. If I word it in Kanban words or our methods that we've been, I figure out it's make work visible, limit work in process, apply explicit policies, manage, measure flow, and continuously improve. Right? So that's where I thought, well, my learnings in this thing have been so great. It's like what I thought was common sense and I was applying and doing. There's actually people have spent so much effort, energy in discovering and proving through studies. So it's like I then discovered that there's a word for people like me called reflective hybrids. We practice things not knowing the theory behind it, and then we reflect. The hybrid pieces, there are people who know the theory drastically well, the real true PhDs in organizations or in college research that don't implement as much. And when the two of us meet, we get a good reflective hybrid scenario. So what are the conditions of success? Align organization initiatives to strategic themes, right? Whether I want customer experience like Virgin, something David talked about, right? They're such a big group, but they are all aligned to a singular theme, all about customer experience. Apple has so many different divisions with so many apps. They have a singular theme all about, right? That's why they have that company loyalty. It's not product loyalty, right? And it goes beyond. And that's where if you can get them all aligned to that common sense, minimize interruptions in flow due to late discoveries of risk, impediments, or blockers, right? Because we are so eager to jump. When we are asked to jump or like solve a problem, we don't stay and ask why. We just say how high. And that's what gets us into most of these situations that we are not in. Instead of discovering and exploring what the problem statement is, we start solutioning it. Right? And that's where I see the most, and so that is where hindrance to our flow is. So implement small fail cycles to enable active collaboration sessions. Fast feedback loops, where we think the biggest tip is, we all know what that is. It's just getting that mindset to align to this is where it is. I wouldn't say any one of us hasn't achieved any one of these, but some of the things I talk when I walk into these new organizations where they have these multiple flavors of Agile already, we already do this, Vikas. I said, yes, you do some of the times. You do some of these things some of the time. All I am asking you, and I'll be here coaching you into, is how you can do all of these things most of the times. And that's the continual improvement journey we want to talk about. We want to be in when I even engage with people who've been doing Agile for 5 years. Because doing is not important. Being, the mindset, is where we want to be. So I didn't put the explicit numbers of where put this in because being in different contexts, in different perspectives, those vary. But at an abstract level, when I've looked at this portfolio board for an organization, it's been there. Now you'd ask me what's pets. These are the CEO's pet projects, the garage project that they want nevertheless, even above the urgent issues like the CEO or the COO or whoever is leading you wants that simple thing, and who believes it's simple but hasn't gone through enough discovery to say how cumbersome it could be or how big it could turn out to be. Yet you put it in there, you work through the same processes of cost of delay, and then when I do have the cost of delay math, I also put another column there, which is called the CEO's Trump or Mr. Donald Trump, loudest voice. What factor did I have to multiply the original score of COD for this particular thing to make it number one? And I say that to that leader, you know what? We had to multiply it by 20 to make it happen for you in this time. Now go figure out what impact it has on domino effect on the 15 items that it had to climb up on. Because if I had said that without that figure to him, without that realization that we had to have that extra column for him, they don't listen. It's like, nah, excuses, you're just giving us excuses. So this makes it objective and a good conversation with them over there. 3 reasons why these are the 7 highly effective Ds of the cycle is: 1, ensure the work isn't initialized until there is agreement to delight the end customer. We spend enough cycle time here on dream, discover, define, and design. The true agile software development methods right about there. We've spent enough time and enough discovery to figure out what is required to delight the customer. It's very much like a patient walking into the ER, right? Or you even just walking into your general physicians and you say, I have a sore throat. The doctor just doesn't come and prescribe you the medicine. That's solutioning right there. Now, the doctor says, let me do a couple of cultures to figure out if you've got strep, or is it flu, or is it just pure, you had too much ice last night, or were you shouting at your kids? I don't know. Let me figure that out, and by the way, come back in 2 days, I'll have the results bin. They don't just, if the doctor actually prescribed you the antibiotics right then and there, you wouldn't go back to that doctor. But in software, we want to go and solution it as soon as we hear the problem statement. And we don't even hear the problem statement. What we actually heard was the symptom. The first pain point that the customer may be having, that wasn't even the root cause, not even the problem statement. In that physician, the sore throat is a symptom. The problem could be flu, could be strep throat, could be just too much ice last night, right? So we don't know what the problem is yet. And that's where, and then enable people responsible to deliver the main focus when overwhelmed with conflicting priorities. The doctor again prescribes the solution. It's the pharmacist that goes through and gives you your solution, the prescription. And they have to work through their priorities, and they do that, and they ask you to come in so much SLA time. And we work with that, common sense, we do it. But when we try to do it through our multitasking and project priorities, it doesn't work for us. And that's where this approach helps us to bring common sense back to life, or in the corporate life. 70s enforce people responsible for solution support to have an influence through the product life cycle, not just build and delivery, right? Because Agile software delivery is only talking about development and deployment. With DevOps, even we are not going to be, but the life cycle of the product, that is only, again, the 15 to 20% time of the life cycle of that product. The major portion of it is in support cycle, this thing, and the product marketing, upsell, cross-sell, and all of that. We just don't have a lens for it if we just focus on 2Ds and not the 7Ds. Yes? So when do I call success? If I have adapted this and applied these principles, when I see alignment, business value focus, collaboration, flow with built-in quality, leadership, respect for culture, trust, right? When we walk in any of these environments, we have to respect what they have. It's a journey of not we got to change everything. That's not true. They are a successful company. They have been able to invite us in, but they want to be better. Doesn't mean that we don't preserve anything that they have. There's a lot to preserve and actually very little to change or improve on. And we have to respect that when we walk in. And if I put those behaviors in Kanban values, they literally line up pretty well. Alignment is what agreement and balance brings us. Customer focus is all business value focus. Collaboration as is. Flow is what flow built-in quality is. Leadership, like literally they line. And that was the amazing piece and my happiness in seeing that common sense was working. And it is proven in multiple ways. I'm just trying to bring things together so it can be a good cocktail. Is where my thoughts is as I'm putting this together. So it was very fulfilling, putting it slightly simply. Right? So talking about dream, what do I mean by dream is basically vision alignment, right? When I talk about is that you look at strategic initiatives, you want the business drivers, it's not, the initiative is not one statement. It is not, the theme is not one thing. We also need to be able to understand when Virgin talks about customer experience or when Apple talks about their theme, what are all the parameters that they have put into it to create that initiative, to create that theme. That is all that needs to be aware of when you get there, and then apply your SWOT or your SWOF, feasibility, to create your vision and thereby the roadmap from that. And that's where I say the dream needs to be, how do you create your vision? It's based on all of this. Very similar to if you even reread or listen to the speech by Dr. King, I have a dream. He actually talked about all the capabilities, everything that all the people around him had, and that was there in the community and this thing, and how we need to harness that to achieve that dream. Very much in line with this thought process, right? It's just putting that minimal guidance, bringing those learnings back here and talking about in those words. Now that strategic initiative, how do I put it into vision? Again, there are multiple tools available, and I say use any one, whichever the system happens, and I bring them all to the team and say, okay, you can choose the opportunity canvas or the lean canvas from Ashmoria, or you can talk about the a lightweight business case, or create a technical feasibility. If there's a big enterprise architecture team, they all generally, and they have a portfolio kind of a group, they already have a lot of this. How can you review and assess that to make it a little more lean, a little more focused, rather than being too broad and deep, right? Sometimes, and that's the intent. And the lean canvas from Ashmoria is a good example that works a lot. I actually use it also to start off my journey. The first 16 to 18 week rolling map cycle is, once I walk into the transformation, okay, this is going to be our opportunity after my assessment. This is what your drivers were. These are your problem statements, and I create my business opportunity canvas with them about that transformation, and then use that, then create epics, features thereby out of it, how we go through the 16-week journey. But this, then they see the success of it and they want to start adapting it for their own business initiatives. Or a lightweight business case. So doing this is, we make a simple, succinct idea in line with business drivers and organizational vision, which is evaluated just in time with measurable, articulate, specific information. Because instead of getting lost in all that data, we are just making it very focused conversation, and that is focused on all of that. And what that focus does is takes the wishful thinking away, right? Because, and or just add that COD column of pets, telling the leadership, you know, that's what your wishful thinking is doing to us. Visualize that, right? Make it explicit. Now what does Discover do for us? Elaborate the large business initiatives as epics, again using it, or you can use capabilities, or you can use any other industry standard, whatever exists. It's just saying that it's a large chunk of work that needs to be done. Then enable to drive collaboration among the key stakeholders, right? It's not that just the business needs to participate, it needs a cross-functional mindset. The importance is that I know this problem is a polygon. I need to figure out if it's a quadrangle, pentagon, or a hexagon. And if it's a quadrangle, I need to figure out if it's a rhombus, square, or rectangle. That needs to be done before I start solving for it. And that's the journey that you need, that different mindsets to do that. And I say you get a powerful guideline for the large chunk, and the word power, again, I play with acronym there. Purpose, outcomes, all the W's, what, why, who, when, and where. You see, I take the H out, and then E is the engagements, whether it's upstream, downstream, that you need to manage that, and the risks and resources. It makes conversations very focused. If I say you got to just talk about 5 alphabets, people feel like, okay, it's not that bad. And then I say you're talking about 5 alphabets and you need to be here only 90 minutes to 2 hours. All right, how many of these will get done? I said that's about your conversations. We can apply lean coffee to every one of those chunk of work. So you got 90 minutes, we'll get about 6 of them done. And now it starts bringing an energy. It starts bringing their engagement, and that helps. So we apply WIP limits as simple as starting to get them engaged by talking about lean coffee. Time boxing it by 15 minutes. That's an easy concept. They don't feel overwhelmed because you don't want to say to the CEO or even the portfolio strategy group that, you know what, you can only do 2 things at a time. Why? Because what got them there was the pride in this resume that says, I'm the best at multitasking. That's what they pride. Tell them to do 1 thing at a time and they're like, are you kidding me? And then you need to go into a 40-second exercise with them to show how bad they are at multitasking. And given the time, I will not do that exercise, but I was planning on. Or should we do it? You don't mind me missing a few slides at the end, right? Yeah? Go for it. All right. All of you who have a pen and a pencil in your hand, honor system will work. It'll be 3 sets, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and 20 seconds. All right. In the first 10 seconds, when I say go, you will write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H all the way that you can in 10 seconds, right? Now, if you want to add a complexity to this, just think how estimation works. Estimate how far will you get in 10 seconds and write it at the corner of your own sheet. When you're writing A, B, C, D all the way to Z, how far would you get in 10 seconds? Write it at the corner of your sheet to yourself as an estimate. All right, are we ready? Start. Stop. I am consistently poor. I always stop it at 10:42 to 10:48. My reflexes are those 0.4 seconds slow. Consistently. Awesome. So you know, how was your estimate to where you got? This is something you guys are expert at doing since the age of 5, right? So judge your own selves in honor system how good you were on your own estimates. We talk about estimation being accurate with experts. Next, in the next 10 seconds, do the same thing and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 till 100. Wherever you can get to in 10 seconds. Be good with that? Make sense? All right. Yes, go for it. Yeah, try it again. Try the estimate again. All right, start. Stop. All right. Now, your estimates and you got where you got. We will now do multitasking. We're experts at it, all of us. And the multitasking is in 20 seconds, just double the time. We'll write A1, B2, C3, D4, E5 to Z26, right? We good with that? Estimate? Your estimate is like if you are Z26, it's 52 tasks, right? If you are D5, this thing, then you're 10 tasks and stuff. We good? 20 seconds, start. Stop. And see the same 0.42 seconds of reflex action delay. So now do an addition to yourself to figure out how much of cognitive bias loss you had, cognitive thinking, multitasking loss you had. When adding the first 10 seconds to it, that's your total you could achieve when you were doing sequentially, limiting your whip to one thing at a time, and when you did 2 things at the same time. Standard, what I have figured, it's generally between 20 to 40%, depending on individuals. But it varies in that. So when we say that there's a cognitive loss of about 20% in project efficiency, just purely by multitasking, that's the conservative view. Make sense? So that's where another exercise I do consistently to help with limiting whip theory or multitasking and saying to projects that if you did, now think about it this way, 2 major factors came in about your estimation, how accurate you are, and on top of it, it's getting quadrupled or in essence a factor on with your cognitive multitasking loss of efficiency. So there you go. So a well-defined problem statement, when we talk about in vision with power, putting that in, and is something that you're able to talk about value of stating the problem so that all collaborating understand the issue and its impact explicitly. I so loved it yesterday when David talked about that value of impact. There are things we talk about it, and that's where we had the conversation last night, you and I, Frank, is consider the impact is important. the f of x, right? Just looking at the problem statement, I have pain, it's like we do on a daily basis. I have a chronic pain in my arm and leg now. I am still here and just have a couple of brufens every other day and I move on. Sometimes I go to the physiotherapist, get it done. It's not life-threatening yet. Whereas if something else was there, I would be walking into the doctors and be there more explicitly. So knowing the impact of what I'm dealing with, what my pain points are, what my problem statement is, very important. Just because I have a problem, I shouldn't just go and say that I need to solve for it. That severity, importance is an element of there. And clearly defined as reflecting holistically the immediate and the ancillary symptoms. Because we sometimes just talk about these immediate symptom and we think that's the root cause, but if we start talking about the ancillary system using simple tools like Ishikawa fishbone diagram and stuff, getting to the 5 whys, looking at it from people, process, and that holistic view gives us a lot more to solve for. Or like doing a simple empathy mapping, a simple story mapping exercise to figure this thing out holistically, right? The beauty part about the empathy mapping, it talks from the user's perspective. It talks from the end, not the system behavior, not the system perspective. It talks, so when we are talking about the problem, we are not already constraining ourselves with the system. At this time, we still have minimal constraint because we are still only talking about the user's behavior. What is the pain to them, not what are the limitations of the system. That's the last thing we should be talking about. And yes, we should talk about that in development and deploy phase, not in dream, discover, define phase, right? Make sense? So again, that P that I was talking about, the acronym POWER plays in to talk about the customers' pain points, what are the outcomes they're expecting, why, when, where, who are all I need to be engaged with, upstream, downstream, and what are the risks, blockers, or the resources I need. And resources, I don't talk about people people in this. Resources is also what networking gear I need, what hardware I need, what infrastructure I need is the important element. The engagements is the people element that I talk about. Who all do I need engaged? Who, when I talk about who, it's the user. Right, so that statement, if we have that in there, it's a good one. Or there's another template from the epic value statement and gives you another focus to writing it all about talking about minimal constraints and what is in scope, what is out of scope, what are the NFRs. And it's early enough you're talking about it rather than late. So benefits of discovery, desirable outcomes are elaborated with minimal guidance. Loudest voice rule is minimized. Right? Again, that wishful thinking, loudest voice, the same things keep hampering us. It's how do we keep that out and make it more objective and less subjective about things. So when we go into the define phase, we talk about elaborating the epics, breaking them down into features. Now let's bring in the concept of invest, where they're independent enough, they're negotiable, and we all know what the guidelines are. And when we're talking about the conditions of success, let's be measurable, specific, and Mars or SMART, whichever way you want to look at it. People say let's use Mars because we already talked about the T, invest. So why talk about it in a SMART but call it Mars? Like, okay, works for me. Why duplicate? So refining the product backlog is a process with outputs. Again, play on words, B, C, D, E. Make it alphabetically simple. Is breaking larger work items into smaller work items, clarifying the details and defining the problems, defining and refining and estimating. It's important at this stage. You don't have to estimate in accurate, but at least t-shirt size it. And Epic and this thing. What does t-shirt size does is that when the influence of technology says it's going to be $1 million, to the business says not really, it's not a business case then for me. It's only worthy for me at $500,000. So you know how you're t-shirt sizing it at that time, and is it worthy? And the conversation that you want is it cannot be done, is not what can you do for me in 500K then? If you can, if you think what did you think you were achieving or doing for me in that $1 million that you were asking for? And I have found those conversations to say, I was having the wedding cake and then bells and whistles on top, and not only had the bride and groom. No, every cake doesn't need to be the wedding cake. You know, I just want to eat a cake this weekend, and it doesn't have to be the wedding cake. So we need to have that conversation about scope, what is required and not. So estimation as early as possible is important from that ballpark number. Refining, pride. When you're refining, you need to go through also is prioritize the backlog, have the acceptance criteria, and a technical overview. Very simply put, like the guy just before us talking was about where simple design concepts, right? Basic 4 things, and then put those in place. It's great. You don't need to have the detailed design done, but have the high level overview guidance. Just saying that, at the end of this cruise or the first day, I need to be at this port, by this lighthouse. Day 2 of my cruise, I'm going to be on that lighthouse. Day 3, I'm going to be at sea. Day 4, I'll be back. So at least have that high level view from your architecture perspective also to say what your runway is going to look like, what your cruise is going to look like while you're cruising. So benefits, target state options are formulated with minimal guidance and constraints, enabling the learning cycle with making more of the unknowns knowns, right? We now give ourselves the opportunity to have the learning cycle. Just iterating in 2-week cycles or iterating through a flow board is not going to give us the opportunity of learning cycles if when we are flowing through it, we already are going at single point targeted solution. If we work towards desired outcome and not the target state, then we are leaving ourselves the opportunity to actually have learning cycles. Otherwise, we are just iterating. Instead of big batch, we have reduced the batch size. Great. But we are not truly incrementally delivering or learning anything in that cycle. So that differentiation is important as well in that journey, to be able to have your options available. So initial ambiguity is now more acceptable while building agility in the system, because now you are building the option set and you're giving them that experience of how learning is happening. And it's not, what I've seen, again, single point solutions are very good, interesting concept. When you go up to your BAs and your products owners or business owners and say, is that all you need? Are you sure this is all you need? You don't need anything more? You're asking the guy whose job it is to say, you're second guessing the same person and he doesn't want to look stupid in front of you. Obviously, he's going to give you 5 more requirements. We bring that on ourselves by doing that. So yeah, there are 3 more for you to go, but I am at 0 time. But I think we started 10 minutes late, 4:40. I had 10 minutes for the 50 minutes. We started at 4. Yeah. Are you guys okay to give me 10 more minutes? We can be done. Inspect and adapt. All right. I am here if you want to stay back. Others who want to leave, open space. Choose with your feet. Thank you.